So tell us what Flagship does.
Yeah, so that's Flagship. Flagship is first and foremost a life science innovation company. We have our own way by which we innovate, which I'll tell you about. Yeah. Once we come up with something that's worth taking forward, we form a company to take that forward. And so we also had to figure out how to do venture creation in a systematic way. We have our own capital, then we deploy into these companies to help them grow for the first 2-3 years. So up until then, they operate as wholly owned pieces of Flagship. And then we spin them out. And we spin them out, and for the first time, additional capital comes in. But by that time, the culture, the senior leadership team, the early proof of concept, the early kind of customer or partner traction is there. And it looks like a company ready to eventually live its life on its own. So we're not interested in building kind of subsidiaries open-endedly. Every single thing we do ends up becoming a company or nothing. Yeah. But so we've become kind of a creator of companies around internal innovations. Now, sometimes these innovations draw from external science, and I can describe that. Yes. But we're not only trying to find science and then find what to do with it and create companies. That's become in vogue the last few years. We've been doing this for 18 years. But we've ended up in a place where we think the sustainable way to do this is to have your own innovation capacity, your own company creation capacity, initial growth, and then the companies have the wherewithal to grow and compete and thrive.
That's fascinating. So walk us through one example of a company that you guys have given birth to from the start to, it's leaving the Flagship fold.
There are many. I think we've been involved in doing about 50 of these that are based on internally developed science, and there's a whole bunch more that also include external. But I'd say one of the internally developed ones that just recently went public, I can give as an example, is Moderna. Yeah. So Moderna was and I'll tell you kind of this. We have this fairly, let's say, prescribed process, which the way people think about entrepreneurship and innovation, especially breakthrough innovation, is that it is unruly, it is chaotic, it is inspired. And
serendipity.
In my view, it's none of those things.
It's none of those things.
Absolutely none of those things. I have a completely contrarian view of that, and I've done it enough times in enough different fields that I think, frankly, just to be a little controversial, I think that's an illusion. In other words, I think that because people haven't done that thing before, it's exciting and unexpected to them. Yes. But actually, pretty quickly, it looks like just another version of what came before them, because the historians come and say, well, before there was the iPad, there was the iPod, and before that there was the Walkman, etc. And all of a sudden, when you look at it that way, you go, well, why were you surprised? Yes. And that's when you realize that these things are just evolving. And so I'll give you an example in this company called Moderna, but before that I'll tell you that underlying how we think you can do this systematically is the notion that breakthroughs aren't made by people, they emerge. And the most understood, not well understood, but understood version of emergence that we know about is evolution, which is that if you do variation, iteration, selection and iteration systematically, the winners will emerge, and when they do, they will look surprising, but actually they're the result of that process. They're not some inspired thought that has nothing to do with that process. So hold that thought as I give examples. There'll all be examples of that, and that actually does cause one to think differently about being possessive about all these companies and all these innovations. We're not. Yeah. We don't go around saying we invented this. Yes. We may file a patent and get an invention, but where these ideas come from are very emergent.